Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Why is it that so many Catholic women struggle with desire? Let's talk about it in this week's episode. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, the podcast for Catholic women that helps you improve your sex life, strengthen your marriage, and embrace God's design for love. My name is Ellen Holloway, and let's get started. Okay, so why is it that desire for sex is such a big struggle for so many Catholic women? I mean, this is the number one question that I get to me. Where did my libido go? What is wrong with me? Why did I used to want sex and now I don't want it at all anymore? All sorts of questions along these lines. So first off, if you have never heard that there is a difference between spontaneous and responsive desire, this might be the only thing that is messing with, quote, your desire. And the difference between spontaneous and responsive desire is that spontaneous desire, that is what we see in Hollywood. This is more common early on in relationships. Someone can have both spontaneous and responsive desire and kind of tend toward one of them. So spontaneous desire is that like out of nowhere, out of the blue, I want to have sex, I need to rip your clothes off, like let's go to the bedroom right now. That's spontaneous desire. Responsive desire means that your desire for sex grows from external input. So meaning like you have a rousing touch from your husband that leads you into desiring sex, or deep emotional connection might lead you into desiring sex. Maybe it's sitting down with a glass of wine or a cup of tea and just like really talking it out. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love. I'm feeling it. I want to go have sex right now. Like that would be an example of responsive desire, as well as like a physical stimuli is causing your body to then have that physical reaction of desire for sex. So responsive desire is completely normal. A lot of times, like we've got to get it into our head that there are two types of desire. There's responsive desire and spontaneous desire. And it is possible for you to experience both. And typically what's going to happen is that you're going to tend more toward one. And it is more common for women to tend toward responsive desire. So if you're like, where the heck did my desire go? It may simply be that at the beginning of your relationship, at the beginning of your marriage, things were new, things were exciting, and your like brain and your body tended more toward that spontaneous desire. And as things kind of settled into place and you got comfortable, now your brain is hanging out more in that responsive desire camp. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you are not broken. But you need to communicate that with your spouse, and you need to recognize it in yourself that when you have responsive desire, your question to yourself needs to change when your husband initiates, or when you're like thinking about possibly initiating sex. Right now, your question probably is, am I currently turned on right now? Do I currently physically desire sex? Something along those lines. You need to change your question to, am I willing to get turned on right now? Am I willing to have sex right now? Am I interested in this? Am I open to getting aroused? Instead of, am I already aroused? Because if you have responsive desire, the answer is always going to be no. And you're going to constantly be saying no to initiating. And the thing is, it's actually completely okay to say yes to sex, even if you don't actually want it at that moment. Because if you have responsive desire, you're probably not ever going to have that moment when you already want it. So there is work to be done, right? There's physical stimuli, maybe emotional stimuli to get you to that aroused state, to get you to that desirous state, that state that you're interested in having sex, right? So it is actually okay to say yes. And that question can really help if we change that question in our mind of, am I open to getting aroused right now? Am I open to having sex right now? Not, do I already want? Am I already desiring of it? I want to remind you that like sex is so good. And sexual pleasure is so good. So it's okay to like really think about these things and really seek them out and tell yourself, yes, I'm open to getting aroused right now. Because in the Catechism, 2362 says that the acts in marriage by which the intimate and chaste union of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable. The truly human performance of these acts fosters the self-giving they signify and enriches the spouses in joy and gratitude. Sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. Okay, this stuff is good. We want this and we should seek it out. The pleasure that comes with sex is part of the act and it is worth seeking out, and it is holy to seek it out. Now, we don't want to overshadow everything else that has to do with sex by only seeking out the pleasure. That becomes use. That's when we're using another person for as like an ends to, as a means to the end, right? Our spouse is not a thing to use in order to get sexual pleasure. But sexual pleasure is part of the act and it's okay to seek that out. Okay, so how can we cultivate desire then when we have this situation of like, I used to want sex all the time and now I don't ever want sex all the time. And likely this is just a trend toward this responsive desire that your brain and your body are taking. But how do we cultivate that? Okay, so the biggest thing is openness, is that we need to be open to our spouse. We need to be open to sex. We need to be open to that pleasure. When we're getting angry at ourselves for not wanting sex, or we're like harboring frustration over how our bodies change, how our relationship has changed, when we're like harboring all that frustration, we're not opening ourselves up to the graces and the goodness and the pleasure and the joy that sex gives us, that sex offers to us. So the biggest thing here is being open. And this is something that you can really work on in prayer with God, is God, show me how to remain open in my marriage. And you can like be explicit, maybe even journal it out, because writing things down is very helpful. Like, God, I am frustrated with this, and this in my marriage right now. I am so angry that these things are happening and these things aren't happening. But Lord, please help me to be open to the grace and the joy and the pleasure that exists in sex. And that prayer is so powerful. And when we're constantly like working on in our mind, I want to be more open, trying to be more open. When we catch ourselves with like a negative thought about sex, frustrated at something, annoyed with something, then we can catch those thoughts and we can say, no, I want to be open to this goodness. I want to be open to what sex can be, what sex should be, what I want sex to be, whatever that sentence needs to be for you. Another couple of practical things about cultivating desire is sex is just one part of intimacy, one tiny part of intimacy. Sex is more of the fruit of intimacy than anything else. And if you're on Instagram, you probably see me using the word intimacy as a word for sex. And that's not correct. I do that on Instagram because Instagram doesn't like the word sex. And so I have to kind of trick the algorithm into not smashing my post down into oblivion. But like, sex does not equal intimacy. Sex is the fruit of a deeply intimate relationship. Intimacy encompasses emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, communication. Like, it encompasses all of this deep intimacy that needs to be present in our relationship for us to even want to have sex. Because sex is deeply vulnerable, deeply intimate. And so if we just ask ourselves the simple question of, do I want to have sex with someone that I don't currently share intimacy with? That's probably going to be a no. And so if you're struggling with desire for sex, take a look at the other areas of your intimate life, as in the emotional intimacy that you and your husband share. And what is it that you can do to increase that emotional intimacy? Because remember, you can only change yourself. You cannot change your husband. You can't. Yes, there might be a million things that you want your husband to do. And you're welcome to ask for those things. And I encourage you to ask for those things and be explicit about the things that you want and desire in your relationship. That is such a good thing. But also you need to remember that you cannot change him. You can only change yourself. We can't change anybody else, but you can change yourself. And there is something that you can do to increase your emotional intimacy in your relationship. There is. I know that there is. Sure, it might go faster if both of you were doing things to increase your emotional intimacy. You might grow in emotional intimacy quicker. But there is, in fact, something that you can do, even if your husband doesn't seem to have any interest in increasing your emotional intimacy. And the same goes for your intellectual intimacy, your spiritual intimacy, your communication. Like, there are things that you can do, even if it doesn't seem like your husband wants to, add to this or put in the work or things like that. There are absolutely things that you can do. And so find those things and work on those things and pray for your relationship and pray for your husband and go to mass once a week in addition to your Sunday mass. So some other times during the week, and dedicate that mass to the intention of your marriage. Or if mass times don't work out very well, pick a holy hour once a week and go. And a holy hour, remember, doesn't have to be in adoration. A holy hour can be sitting on your couch, but carve that out and pray for your marriage. Have your marriage be at the forefront of your prayer. And so when we are able to build this solid foundation of intimacy, then desire for sex actually just naturally flows out of that. And it might not be a physical desire. And this is when we're getting to the big leagues of marriage, the advanced whatever, is that when we've got this deeply intimate relationship, the desire for unity grows so immensely that it's just exists. And that's what we had with Adam and Eve in the garden, is this perfect desire for unity out of a deep and perfect intimacy. And so, we can aim for that. And yes, we are fallen, right? So we can aim for it, and we're probably not going to get there on this side of heaven. But you absolutely can improve the situation that you're in right now, and you can cultivate that desire in good and holy ways. And it is a good thing to cultivate that desire. Because remember, even the Catechism says that sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. This act is noble and honorable. Those are the words that the Catechism uses. This is how important it is. And so it is worth it to do that work, and it is good and holy to do that work. So go get after it. Thanks so much for listening. If you're ready to stop feeling confused or discouraged about sex and finally understand how God designed your body for real, beautiful pleasure, you need to check out the Orgasm course for Catholic women. I'll teach you the tools and the mindset you need to experience the intimacy you were made for, all deeply rooted in Catholic Church teaching. Head over to vinesinfullbloom.com/orgasm, and I'll see you inside.